Welcome. I'm Electra Porzo. I'm director of the Language of Consciousness Institute. And consciousness is an awareness of self. And I also believe it's an awareness of others. And we have different levels of consciousness, where we are aware of our existence and where we are aware of the needs of others. When in the world that we live in, there's a limitation on people for how they can grow in this larger consciousness, the larger consciousness of who they came here to be, something more than their historic personality and their historic way of being, to being a larger version of themselves. Something that has to do with what they came here to be and what they came here to do and came here to have. And that, I think, in large part, that fight or that separation of your historic personality from whom you came here to be is a dilemma for most people. And what we see happening in the world, I believe, is that separation is dominant. It gets you into feeling it's me or them. It's my country versus that country. It's my religion versus that religion. And we end up fighting each other instead of looking for solutions that take care of us all. And I believe that's what human beings actually were. There was a time when there was a unity in human beings. Something happened. We don't know what happened, but all we know is that a trauma took place that made human beings not trust the world they're in and got them separated from the larger forces that are in the universe and the world. Some of the people call those larger forces gods and goddesses. They call them creation. They call them gods and Great Spirit. We call them, in the Language of Consciousness Institute, we tend to use a term called creation. Creation being the largest force that created everything on earth, that has our back in a way that most of us never realized. Well, it's time we realized it, and the time we started acting for everyone, for the good of all. And if you look at some books out right now, one is Charles Einstein, and he has a number of books out. He did Sacred Economics. He did The World We All Know, A Beautiful World We All Know, should be, I think that's the name. And he has another new book out. And Tyson Yunkaporta, who wrote Sand Talk, they're both saying, and it's probably other books too, look, we've got the society we have now is not going to sustain itself and be viable for future generations. If you look at what's happening to the environment, if you look how people are acting against each other, how nations are working against each other, this is not viable. Your grandchildren, my grandchildren, and generations coming don't have a lot for them to rely on if we keep it the same. Well, one of the things I'm doing, if you've been following these, is Charles Einstein created a list of new stories and old stories and juxtaposed them and set them up in little groups and said, what if we emphasize this other side of this new story instead of the old story? And we tried to act differently, be differently. So the one that we're looking at today is the old story is well-being comes through control of natural forces and domination of biological and social competitors. Look where that got us. Not in a good place. The new story, the next story, is well-being comes through participation, community, intimacy, and sharing. So what does that mean? To me, he's missing a word here because one, we're looking at well-being, and two, we're looking at what's the ultimate goal. When you look at any group that people join, and people join groups for community, for intimacy, for sharing, and for participation. And those groups can help the greater whole, or they can help just their own group. So we look at a lot of the online MAGA stuff. That's people end up joining it or being talked into it because they're made to be part of the group. I think even gangs do that for people. But what those groups do are set up the world of separation again, that we're better than you. I know Yunko Porek talks about that as the fatal flaw, that human beings just have a weakness for thinking, well, I'm better than you. I can have more. I should do more. I should tell you what to do. And that doesn't work. So to me, first of all, we have to establish that there's a greater good, that we really have to keep not just our own good in mind, but what is the greater good for all people? What's the greater good for the earth? What's the greater good for the community? Now, I know there's a lot of differentiations there too. When we were talking about it this week with people, it seemed that a lot of groups can set up something that isn't for the greater good for society, for all people in society, but might be the greater good for them, at least as they would like it to be. And that's the people that say, well, let's get the people we don't like not to vote. And let's get the people that we don't understand not to be part of society, and kind of push them away, push away the LGBT people, push away people of other races, push away anybody who doesn't agree with me. And that is that old narcissistic, we're better than you, we know what's right, and we're gonna make a system work for us, not for you, but for us. Well, that isn't the way that a new society is going to be built. It just isn't. And unless we now, you and me and everybody else, says, no, I am going to look to the greater whole, the good for the greater whole, for all people, for all colors of people, for all religions that they hold, for all economic groups. There is no reason in the United States that we have people who are homeless. There is no reason in the United States that we have children going to sleep hungry. There is no reason in the United States that we have people being killed on such a mass level. Those things all by themselves have to be solved. And they can only be solved by saying, somebody's going to have to give up part of the pie in order to create a better world for everybody else. The important thing is everybody thrives. Everybody gets to be their unique and essential self. Personally, I would redo the educational system so that all the children are honored and respected for their unique and essential selves. I would create a healthcare system where everybody had the right to health care. I would create a housing system where we put our money into housing for all. There's no reason in this wealthy country that should happen. And there are examples all over the world where countries have made it possible for their citizens to have an education, to have a regular income, to have health care, and they're blossoming, they're thriving. So in our discussion, we said that overall factor of what is the greatest good for all has to be in the community, the groups that you join, the communities you're part of, the participation that you put. Where do you put your money? Where do you put your vote? Where do you put your action? Put it behind what serves people, what honors and respects the gifts people bring to the world. We are so blessed with a design that is so creative, is so inspiring. You see it all the time, and yet And yet we allow the world of separation, the reality of separation, to dominate us. So I invite you to think about it. We're going to, I hold conversations every week about Charles Einstein's, mainly about his stories. I also, every other week, talk about sand talk. So if you're interested, what you might want to do is go to the Language of Consciousness Institute website, which is www.loc-institute.com, and look at our events, look at our products. We provide you with what we call the language of creation templates, and they help you write what you crave. And the phrases you write always have to be life enhancing and life generating. And in the writing of those, so our mind starts shifting away from the historic thoughts that have been imprinted in our heads from our entire lifetime of living in this society, to recognizing what is our personal craving in this world that is life enhancing and life generating. So I invite you to look at the website. I invite you to join me for the April conversations on Einstein's Next Story. That's on our events page. And I invite you to join me to have a conversation about Sand Talk. It's an amazing book. Everybody who picks it up goes, oh my God, this is blowing my mind. And it's generating ideas of how we might come to the world differently, which is what it's got to be. We can't be who we were. If we want to create a more viable, sustainable future for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and all the babies that are coming, we have to make change now. And I'm starting it with conversation, because I believe that the more you and I listen to each other and hear what we honor and respect for humanity and what we're excited about, we will generate different actions. And so you get new ideas, you get new perspectives, then you take different actions and you get different results. It's just as simple as that. So I invite you to join me. And if not, read Einstein, read Sand Talk, and start thinking about it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.